Hi guys, Darklord Pikachu here. We are once again back with a little peek behind the curtain, so let's play the overly dramatic intro and jump right in. We've got a lot to cover, so what better place to start than at the start of the middle of the video. Let's turn the clock back 2 whole years, to October 2023. I'm a few months into working on my Pokemon stop motion, and it's going well. Red is a joy to animate, Squirtle is a kleptomaniac, and Ivysaur uses Vine Whip. Ivysaur uses Vine Whip a lot. Instead, I decided to put together a video showing off my ever-growing Super Smash Bros. Figure collection. But a simple collection video? Where's the DLP style? Let's chuck some animated bookends on it and... Wait! I know this! Yes, I did it. I recycled. I'm a recycler. Mario's Picture Day started out as just 5 shots at the beginning and end of that collection video. We'll get on to how that 24 seconds grew into a big 4.5 minutes, but first, let's take a look at what we started out with. Shot 1 has Mario poking out the pipe before giving it the old jump man out of there. In Mario's Picture Day, this sequence has quite a few changes, but it's all using the same principal photography from October 2023. The pipe visual is deceptively simple, only the outer rim of the pipe is actually moving. Once Mario joins the group, we realise we're on my favourite piece of filming equipment, the slider, and it's our first big crowd shot. It'd be really difficult animating every figure in every single frame, so this is where the slider becomes our secret weapon. If the camera's moving, then everything's moving. There are a few things I did on this shot to give it some extra life. When you're moving the camera like this, you really want to showcase a nice parallax effect. That's the principle that objects which are closer to the camera appear to move faster than objects away from it. This isn't something you create as such, it's just a fact of how cameras and our eyes work. But you can make a movement more visually interesting by leaning into that and adding more depth to your shot to take advantage of it. For example, Kirby is one of the first characters we see, with Falco on the screen right. But as the camera moves along the slider, we're going to find that Falco appears to move quicker than Kirby does.
Victory!
Compare that to if I just took a still photo of the crowd and digitally panned it across the screen in the edit. It's boring. The second thing I did to bring some extra life to the shot was choose a handful of hero characters which I'd animate whilst the camera moves. We already talked about Kirby, who gives us a nice wave, but there's others like Toon Link, DK, Yoshi, Piranha Plant with some basic animation, just to give the shot a bit more life. Shots 2 and 3 we'll skip over, but shot 2 is going to be important later on, so remember this part. Shot 4 was probably the hardest shot of all to animate. The whole crowd is visible and we're on a locked off camera, so there's no fancy movement to distract, no crutches to lean on. It's only a short piece of animation, but I think this one shot took me over an hour to capture because there's just so much to keep track of in each frame. I needed to know what was going on with Mario because he's the lead, while tracking which directions Pit's wings were moving, who was turning their head which way, that Mr. Game & Watch needed to change position every 4 frames. Inkling swims in as a squid and pops up as a kid. Waluigi even pops in for the last few frames, and we won't be animating him for like another 1.5 years. Finally, shot 5 is our big finale, the one in the group picture video where they actually take the group picture. You can see from the time-lapse I mostly actually animate the camera here more than anything else in the shot. The camera's like a reverse Toy Story or something. When it's on them they come to life, but then the second they leave the frame they just plop. In the original bookends the pace is so snappy to match the music, but in Mario's Picture Day it's more of a slow realisation that things aren't going to plan. Both work, it's just different vibes. To touch again on practical camera movements being more dynamic, you can apply the same animation principles you're using in front of the camera to the camera work itself. For example with this shot, factoring in some overshoot as the camera comes to a stop. This goes for focal length too. If you're going to pull focus between 2 points, animate the in-betweens to get a nice smooth focus pull. I finished animating and editing in January 2024, and those 5 shots were all that was ever planned. Skip forward a month and the collection video goes up, and it's a hit. People who collect collection videos are saying this is one of their favourite collections they've collected. If the video didn't perform well, then I'd plan to upload the animated segments in their own solo upload, just so more people could see them and the shots weren't stuck at the end of another video. But now the video's exceeded my expectations, where does that leave the plan? Do I A, build on those 24 seconds and expand the project into a 4.5 minute epic? B, go back to animating Vine83.png for the Pokemon video? Or 3, start on a brand new animation, neglect my Pokemon animation because a man can only draw so many vines before something just snaps inside of them? It was that one. It was that option. Brand new project, everything else on pause, we're blowing bubbles, speaking to spirits, we're playing pinball, the chow is in a box, remember that, it might be on the test. Much like Sonic in this video, I neglected my other animated children and worked only on this animation until it was finished and uploaded in September 2024. 2 days later, it's straight back into animating. Vine83.png calls to me, but I don't answer. A man can only draw so many vines. And this is where Mario's picture day properly starts. The mission was clear: use the bits I've already shot and fill in the space around them. Some decisions were born out of necessity. I couldn't have the exact same opening shot for both videos, so we need to figure out where Mario's coming from and work that in somehow. Shot 5 had to be the ending, so if I wanted more Smash Bros interactions, they'd have to be sandwiched between shot 1 and shot 5. If the new opening was going to take place in a different location, then it made sense to add an epilogue onto the end that connects back to it and ties everything all up in a nice little bow. Simple. But not simple. We're now working with a bit of a deadline. I'm viewing houses with my girlfriend at this time and we're planning on moving in together. Anything shot on my desk needs to be finished before I move out. That means before we can film the start, we need to film the middle, and there's no hope of filming the end before the start, so it goes middle, start, end, and then...
So now I've gone cross-eyed.
Which brings us to the first new shot. It could have been 2 separate shots quite easily, but I wanted to make it feel more interconnected. The characters have to progress through these areas to get to the group photo, so why shouldn't we? With a cast of characters this large, it's sometimes tricky to decide which groupings get to feature in each shot. A lot of the time it's just whatever I think is interesting. Mario and Sora are the first and last characters in Ultimate, so they should be together. Pac-Man and Game & Watch are the oldies. And for this shot it was because Ken, Zelda and Daisy were all figures I'd obtained after the collection video. I wanted to give them some focus here because I'd already shot the group photo bit and they obviously weren't in it. Apart from when they were, but we'll get to that later. Zelda in particular I gave quite a large role, with the next shot being our first big VFX one. We've had some VFX for blinks and eye movements so far, but this is our first big one, recreating the UI from Breath of the Wild. This was such a fun challenge and a great test run for the more complex shot coming later with Link. You'll notice all the text and assets are mirrored. I wanted to give the impression that Zelda's actually seeing the UI and we're just seeing some sort of projection of it. I have to give some major props to Jack Specific for this Zelda figure. It's surprisingly great to animate with all the scrolls and tapping. Add some light flashes, add some sound effects, slap the UI on top, and it all works really well together here. I've got a lot to say about sound design later on, so I'll cover that more when we get there. At this point, things are coming together too nicely. I think we need to shoot in a more confusing order, don't you? I doubled back to shoot the Isabelle shots that are going to go before Ken and Ryu, but after the pipe, my head hurts. With some hand masking, we've got our POV shot sorted, along with a nice practical camera movement to look up and down. I wrote up a nice little checklist for her clipboard and keyframe animated the pen arm to tick off Ryu and Ken. The little movement right at the end matches continuity with the next shot. This is called cutting on action. It helps your shots flow together really well. I talked about it in detail in another behind the scenes video, so check that out if you're interested. Continuing to shoot out of order, because why not? The main Isabelle shot was next, and this was honestly one of the strangest ones I've ever shot. There's like no movement in the foreground. It's all happening slightly out of focus in the background. So I just sort of plopped Isabelle in front of the camera and then went in the background to do all my animation. I find out of focus background animation like really effective at making a shot feel alive. It's like they're back there doing something. You can't really see it. Do they know we're here? Do they know they're on camera? Update on the real life stuff. Mrs. DLP and I will officially be moving into our new home in January. Super exciting. I guess it means I need to finish the last bit set on my desk for continuity reasons, but that's okay, there's loads of time to, oh my god, the Pokemon video. From October to December, I worked my arse off on the Pokemon video. It felt like almost every waking hour was spent getting that out of the gate before I got a nice new gate, and I didn't have my old gate anymore. And my mum painted my old gate a different colour and turned it into a craft room, and all of a sudden my old gate didn't look like my old gate anymore, so I couldn't film in it or in my new gate because my new gate looks nothing like my old gate. Sorry, I lost control of the metaphor. Point is, I had to put in the hours, but we did it. The video goes up. It's done. They all come together at the end to steal Ash Ketchum's mysterious Smash invitation. Remember that bit. We're gonna come back to it. I keep saying that. No more Pokemon. The deadline's getting closer, and I couldn't do it. I moved out, leaving my figures and equipment behind. Settling into the new house would be taking up most of my time for the next few months. By March, it was finally time for Operation Go Back to Mum's house and grab the final shot before she redecorates your old room. Oh, and I started recording the Q&A. One advantage of the delay was that I now had the Figma Tears of the Kingdom link and could now work him into the video. Okay, this auto build shot I've had a few questions on, so I'm going to break it down in a section I like to call Cooking with DLP. Step 1. Load up your copy of Tears of the Kingdom, make sure you have some method of recording, and start grabbing that reference footage. Step 2. Time for some stop motion animation, making sure you have a good idea of what the final product will look like as you shoot. Step 3. Cutting out photos. You want to start removing the backgrounds for the foreground elements and masking some of your pieces to appear as if they've been split apart. Chuck it in the edit and animate with keyframes, then leave to simmer. Step 4. Using your reference footage, recreate the UI as best you can in Photoshop. Move it into Vegas, then use it as a guide to animate your newly created assets. Step 5, we're almost there, so you just want to add a little spice to your meal with some special effects. We want to give everything a nice glow, then sprinkle on some green goopy glue. Here's one I made earlier, just a few frames in Photoshop using the same footage as reference. And voila! dinner is served. You'll want to leave the game audio in there because that's what we're going to throw directly into the final video. And don't forget step 6, which is to like this video and click the subscribe button. Thank you very much. I'd also like to make it clear at this point, the video was not sponsored by Amazon. I put a clip of this shot on Reddit, and without any context, people just really thought it was sponsored by Amazon. Having completed that last shot, I boxed all my figures up and they finally moved over to the new house with me. I'd like to take this moment to bid a fond farewell to the desk which I've animated on for so many years. Please join me in respectful contemplation and say a prayer for my viewer retention rate for the next 52 seconds.
I will be there if you need me, and I know you'll do the same. I can see you, I can hear you in my heart. You will be here if I need you. I will never have to guess, 'cause we are very special friends.
If anyone's still watching, I uploaded the Q&A in May, and finally, there were no other projects to get in the way. I booked a full week off work in July, and you'll be glad to hear we're finally shooting things in order. I knew I wanted to set up the premise of the video all in one shot. A long take that tells us Mario takes group photos for his games, the Smash Bros photos next, and that he's overslept, all without any dialogue. I was inspired by the intro to Curse of the Were-Rabbit, but there's no Baby Gromit in my version, sadly. I took the Olympic and tennis photos myself, which took up a surprising amount of time and effort, but the Mario Kart photo was taken by Gabe's Animations, so special thanks to him. I originally planned to shoot the rest of the video on my new desk, but I found that I couldn't actually get the camera slider low enough to get the shot I wanted. Instead, my girlfriend graciously let me take over our living room for the week, so I set my spare table at its max height, which gave me a lot more space to work with and spared me a lot of back pain from bending down for hours. I mentioned earlier that I like to add some depth to the slider shots, and you can see it again here with the question mark block and the bricks all the way in the foreground, giving us that nice parallax effect with the movement. Worth the extra work, I think. I hope. Please tell me it's worth the extra work. Throughout the video, actually, most of the camera work is practical. Even Mario going down the pipe was accomplished by dropping my tripod height to get the right perspective change. There are some digital touch-ups, of course. The POV shot was done on my slider, so I had to bounce it up and down in the edit to replicate the running. Now, having the week off work, I went all out animating and editing. I'd animate as late as 5 AM, then just completely crash. I haven't committed this much to a video since the third Sonic stop motion collab. It's not sustainable. I don't recommend it. I know there's people that can just shoot an entire video's worth and then edit it right at the end. I'm really impatient, so I like to shoot for a couple of hours, then edit that session as much as possible. I also just like improvising. That Figma link that arrived, those Pikmin figures, I can throw them into the video, adjust on the fly a bit more. Keeps it interesting for me, and when you're working on a video for so long, you want it to be interesting. I want to say up front right now, storyboards don't have to look great. At least that's what I tell myself. I felt storyboarding this part really helped me. It was super tricky to keep track of everything. Some of the shots changed a bit, but it's mostly all here. I shot all of the assist trophy bits in one go, then I cut them up in the edit, just so I wouldn't have to remount the same shot over and over. I think it's the first time I've actually done that in stop motion. It's really normal for shooting anything in live action, but it felt super strange giving more power to the edit, cutting up the animation. After all the cross-cutting, we arrive at Subspace Station. I knew I was starting out with a very Mario-focused aesthetic, and ending up with a very Smash Bros one, obviously. So I wanted a middle ground in there to easily transition between the two. The warp zone's filled with supporting characters from different franchises, and it goes to a bunch of different locations from different games. I also had Link ascend into the station to make his inclusion later feel a bit more earned. He's guiding Mario along before he glides in to save the day later. I was super happy with how this shot turned out. The Figma Link is on a whole other level when you've been stuck animating Mario for so long. I felt like I'd been released from prison. When he reaches down to grab the newspaper, I actually removed his arm to get the angle right, cut it out digitally, and animated it with keyframes. It turned out pretty good, I think. August 2nd was the reward for all my hard work. I saw Oasis at Wembley Stadium with my family, and they were phenomenal. Easily in my top 3 gigs of all time, and in those last couple weeks, I'd never felt more on top of the world. I was going to take that momentum and roll with it. I wasn't going to let it slide away. I was feeling supersonic, and nothing was getting in the way of me finishing this video. I caught the thing at Oasis. I don't know if YouTube lets me say the name of the thing, but you know what the thing is.
Open your heart, stay 6 feet apart.
Momentum is so key to staying motivated, so this sucked. This really sucked. I'd like to take this moment to thank Mrs. DLP for letting me take over our living room for a ridiculous amount of time, going to see Oasis without her, and then bringing home an illness for us both to share. I did actually shoot the day after it. I should have known I was ill because it was one of the only shots I scrapped in the entire video. Mario peering through the crowd that would then lead into the POV shot of him looking around. Going from looking directly at Mario to looking through his eyes was way too much of a jarring transition, so I had to scrap it. But it does give us a better look at the people in the crowd. So in the spirit of Smash Bros, it's a bit of a crossover. At the back, we can see Chaos Zero from the Sonic Adventure video, complete with their chow in a box and suitcase. I like to imagine this is where the sewer led to at the end of that video, and they're on their way to start their new lives, pinball free. Just next to Mario, we've got Ash Ketchum. Last time we saw him, he just picked up a mysterious envelope and was attacked by Red, Charizard, Ivysaur and Squirtle. In the POV shot, we can see where this envelope actually ended up, as well as Ash's hat after the brutal mugging. We've also got a Mega in there representing my 2022 animation, and Blaze the Cat, because Silver4G specifically asked about her in my Q&A, and I always aim to please. At this point I decided I was definitely going to make this behind the scenes video, so I recorded my screen for the entirety of this shot. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the live feed from my DSLR whilst I was setting up and shooting this part of the video. Massively sped up, of course. I thought this would give a bit of insight into my process. You can see I'm trying to frame the shot first before any lighting, and there's usually a lot of tinkering during this period, especially with crowded shots like this. I actually messed up my continuity on this one because Waddle Dee should be standing next to Blaze. I zoomed in tighter to hide that in the final video. Unfortunately, that meant we had to lose some of the animation on the screen right. I'm going to stop fast forwarding for a little bit so you can see how this all looks in real time. It's basically endless replaying of the previous frames to make sure the motions carry through correctly. And when it's a crowd shot like this, there's multiple characters to keep track of, each with their own movements to complete. I'd probably get more done if I spent less time replaying everything, but I'm too obsessive for that to be possible. The perfectionist life is a blessing and a curse. I kind of wish I'd screen recorded more shots because this probably gives the best idea of how I animate. I know some people stream on YouTube when they animate and I just cannot multitask well enough to do that. I think if I tried to speak at the same time I'd just malfunction, so no animation streams from me, sorry. Now that we've covered most of the big crowd parts, it's a good time to finally talk about sound design. At a very basic level, anything you hear has been added in post, because there's no sound recorded when you take a photograph. Following that logic, every sound you hear is there by design, with the sole focus of tricking your brain into thinking what you're seeing is real video. So when a character steps forward, you hear a footstep, because that's what your brain expects to hear. Now this is where the DLP obsession to detail comes in. When you see Mario step forward, you don't just hear a footstep, no. You hear Mario's footstep. When Bowser runs forward, it's from the games. When you hear Ryu and Ken skip across the screen, it's from the games. When Sora swings his Keyblade, it's from the games. When Dr. Kawashima smashes his maths test, it's sound from the games. When you hear Ash speak, it's because I found a line from Pokemon the Movie 2000 and I isolated the audio and put it in.
Hey, give me back my hat!
That one was hard. There are too many examples to list everything, but I got very specific with some of these. The paper being delivered from the NES game Paperboy. The Smash 64 intro. The opening sound effect of every Smash 4 trailer. And my favourite one. Throughout the video, whenever the camera moves, you hear the camera sound effects from Mario 64. But more specifically than that, if it's zooming in, you hear the Mario 64 zoom in sound. If it's zooming out, you hear the zoom out sound. And if it's moving, you hear the camera movement sound. It was all about creating a soundscape that sounded as busy as it looked, and using game-accurate sounds where possible. Something unique to stop-motion animation is you obviously can't see what happens between each frame, or how much time has passed. In my Pokemon animation, for example, it's shot as a one continuous shot, but there's actually months between some of the photos. When you play it back, it's all instantaneous. This makes shots like the one on the screen so fun, because you can swap out props between frames in a way that isn't possible in live action. I printed 3 different versions of the newspaper, and at the apex of each shake, I'd take one off Mario's hands and sub in the next one. All I needed to worry about was ensuring the arc of motion stayed consistent, and that Mario's hand was more or less in the same position relative to the paper. Oh, and some background animation with Waddle Dee and Dry Bones, because I'm addicted to background animation now, and I just enjoy making my job more difficult. It's now October, and we're officially 2 entire years on from shooting Mario popping his head out the pipe for that collection video. So it's fitting that after a Toadette whistle and some masking for the pipe flip, we've finally come full circle. The feeling of having everything finally Sonic Connect was really something else. I'd spent the last 3 months laser focused on the opening 2 minutes to the point where I'd honestly forgotten I had this part in the can. I added another minute and a half to the runtime overnight. It was magical. It took a hell of a long time, but I finally got the payoff for shooting in the weirdest order ever. It was just a case of making sure the pipe lined up roughly with the pipe I shot in 2023. But there was actually still another transition I needed to figure out. Remember 10 hours ago when you started this video? I said to remember that shot 2 would be important later on. So remember this part. You didn't remember, did you? And I specifically asked you to. How sad. Shot 2 in the collection video transitioned into my version of the Smash 64 title screen. For a long time I had a similar type of transition in the edit for Mario's Picture Day, but it was messing with the pacing and it felt too much like an ending. I also knew that in the newly shot sections I'd added these recurring things like Pikmin and the changing newspaper. For obvious reasons these wouldn't have a presence in the already shot scenes, and I didn't really like that. I felt like it made it obvious it was shot at a different time. It felt a bit more Frankenstein. The solution to both of these concerns was to have the newspaper be sucked into the pipe and then digitally pop out the other end and flutter past the screen. I'd then have it slam onto the screen for Mario's reaction shot, show the final new headline, and seamlessly transition into the shot of Isabelle. Personally, I think the most impressive part is that I completely pulled this out my arse. I didn't plan this at all. I got very lucky that I happened to choose a photo of Isabelle back in July, and now it looks like part of some grand master plan. That's your reward for making it so far into this surprisingly long video. You get to know that I'm a fraud. In November, it was time to shoot the final scene in Mario's house, but I had some changes to make to the group photo before it was finally time to print it out and put it on the wall. I mentioned earlier that I'd picked up some more figures to shoot in the section on my desk, and I really wanted to get them into the group photo somehow. Because my old room no longer looked like that, I knew I'd have to get creative with it. I very roughly tried to recreate the height, angle, and aperture of the original photo using Dragon Frame's onion skin feature and Mario as a reference. Then I moved into Photoshop and started cutting out and slotting the characters into the original photo. It was quite a bit of work for something people probably wouldn't notice, but it would have annoyed me forever if I knew characters were missing, so it had to be done. I even got to add Ganondorf, who arrived too late to be worked into any of the animation. I've had some more figures arrive since the video released, so just imagine that Snake is hiding in his box in the background somewhere. The group photo was done, so it was time to make a quick blinking version, print both out, and we were ready to go. The shot of Mario adjusting the frame was done in a really fun way. I set my tripod up to get a super high angle shot and sorted it so the wall and the frames would be on my table. Then I just kept Mario still, disconnected his hands, and only animated those. If I'd kept them connected and animated the arms, he couldn't hit poses I'd need him to hit because the head, he's got a big head, I guess, in the way. He's sensitive about it. The rest of the ending was all about bringing lots of elements back from throughout the video, just to give it some nice sense of closure. So we have some of the Smash roster in Mario's house, the Pikmin are running around again, Squirtle's got Ash's hat on, and of course, the now injured Koopa Troopers. I wanted to work their little dance in somehow, so thankfully the music fit the scene quite well and I could make that happen. For a final beat, it was fun to have the Pikmin actually interact with Mario after spending the whole video in the background and direct his attention to the photo. As with before, I put some thought into the background character choices. The Koopa shot featured Mario, Link, Kirby and Pikachu because they're the core 4 from Brawl's reveal trailer. The next shot has Fox and Diddy Kong talking because I love their partnership in Subspace Emissary. For the final shot, I picked a random sort of collection, but I put Sonic in there as an apology to anyone who only watches my channel for the Sonic videos. We never forget where we came from. And just like that, I finished animating. 2,478 photos in total, the second most I've ever taken for a project behind Club Nintendo 2, and a total of 105 figures photographed, which is definitely a record for me. I say photographed, not animated, because that total includes Ganondorf, and I don't know if tilting a cutout photo of him counts as animating the figure. You can judge. We're now caught up to December, the month the video released. This is all the last minute changes now. So very late in the process, I decided to go back and change how I animated every single blink. In earlier renders, you can see I animated blinks with just the top eyelid. It was a hangover from animating Sonic for so long, where that feels more natural. But for Mario, it didn't feel right to me. I wanted to animate both eyelids meeting somewhere in the middle, like a human. My process for blinks was to duplicate the photo onto 2 layers, then mask out the eyes on the top layer. Between the layers, I'd make some eyelids out of a block colour and animate them by keyframing the mask to open and close. There are a few shots where I actually digitally replaced the irises as well, using the blink to disguise the transition as best I could. This would involve a few more in-between layers, an off-white background and a recreation of each iris. The last day of work consisted of tweaking the colour grade, and then it was done! The video went up, and for the first time since July 2023, I was no longer working on any stop motion animation. What even am I without a video in the works? I didn't want to find out, so that's why we're here right now. That brings us to this video today. But don't worry, I'm not doing a behind the scenes of the behind the scenes video. Even I have limits. I hope you guys found some of this interesting. I feel like I promised to look at the making of Mario's picture day, and then I tricked you into watching a documentary on my life for the last 2 years. This video really was the end of an era for my channel in some ways. The last animation shot in my old house, and the first animation shot in my new one. I'm not working on any other animations at the moment, so you'll just have to hit that subscribe button to find out when the next one shows up. That's not to say that I'm not working on anything. For the last few months, me and some friends have been hard at work preparing something for later in the year, but you'll have to click a different subscribe button to find that out.
I don't get it.
Oh, no, I get it.
It's a Goring teaser, like you have to subscribe to Goring.
Oh, well then I didn't get it.
Yeah, no, I was still not following.
Welcome to the end slate. I'm unscripted. We've got 20 seconds to talk because that's how long YouTube says I have. I hope you enjoyed the video. This took a lot longer than I expected to because I got really into Final Fantasy VII, the remake, then the original, then the prequel. Basically, I just played a whole bunch of fun. Oh, I'm running out of time. Subscribe.